Since its introduction, AI has shaken the world with its capabilities and what it can do. Over the course of my life, I have ran my own business, and within that time, our goal was always to test products and put them out as fast as we possibly could, all while gathering people's emails so that we could grow our email list. When I was in public school, specifically in high school, this happened. I had a teacher tell us, as long I will make you this promise at the beginning of the semester, as long as you turn everything in, you will pass. And this was in high school, and this was the first time someone ever told this to me, and this has stuck with me ever since then. Mathematically, how the grading system works, as long as you turn everything in, and especially more as long as you turn everything in and do it to the best of your ability, you will pass. And that has stuck with me to this very day. And whenever I was working on my business, I would be making stuff for a client, and we would have sales copy that we would write. And this would follow a formula, and we would usually, like, a lot of times hire someone and would say, hey, here's the formula. We need this written for this particular clientele. Now, we don't even do that anymore. We just go to ChatGPT or whatever your favorite tool is, whatever, and say, hey, here is our target market. We need sales copy for this kind of page, and we need to speak to these kinds of pain points and speak to these kinds of benefits and have it written for this kind of web page, keeping in mind that people will be skimming this type of text and not actually reading it, so feel free to repeat stuff as you are going down the body of text. And just like that, we have eliminated an entire niche of people that we would hire and sometimes go back and forth within a months of process of between getting revisions and people not getting the gist of what we're trying to do. And we would even disclose this to every single one of our clients that we would be working with, say, hey, just as a disclosure, we did use AI in order to make this, and this would evolve so much to the point where we had clients saying, I would be more ashamed if you did not use AI. I would be more ashamed if you did not use all the tools at your disclosure, at your hands in order to work on this. Uh, and many people have expressed frustration with this because it's like, oh, well, you didn't actually write it. So I wanted to ask the question, when is a tool no longer a tool? So I sat down with three of some of my close friends, all who are experts within their field, an entrepreneur, a teacher, and a independent writer in order to try to get the answer to this question. How much have we changed as a society? Are we changing for the better? And when is a tool no longer a tool? I remember at the time that there was a lot of hubbub over like Bitcoin and blockchain stuff, and specifically like whatever sort of like scam art stuff was going on at the time with the monkeys. There's almost been like this perpetual motion of like, hey, this is the next big thing that's going to revolutionize the entire world. So when I first heard about it, I kind of brushed it off as, oh, this is just going to be the next pyramid scheme sort of thing. I didn't think it would actually, you rarely think it's actually going to be what it is. So I wanted to sit down with all my guests and get a read on the room of where were they when they had first heard about it and what were their thoughts on it.
It almost felt too good to be true. It's kind of that saying, if it's too good to be true, then it probably is, kind of comes to
Hmm.
mind. It kind of felt like, okay, but what does this mean? And of course, there was that fear mongering of, well, does that mean I'm replaced? But coming to the realization that it can actually enhance what we're doing instead of like that initial sense of like, what does this mean? Am I still going to have some level of control over my business?
Hmm.
Can I set my business up to run without me? And I've learned that is not the case. AI is incredible, but you are going to hit hiccups and, being able to find resources and people who work well with AI that can kind of help when you hit those weird points.
Immediate suspicion and distrust, but that's partly like I am by nature a bit of a knee-jerk contrarian. Sometimes it has served me well. Um, Sometimes it has, sometimes it hasn't. But in this case, I think it served me well. I do tend to take things with a level of caution. And once I started hearing about this thing, once I realized what it was doing, what it was used for, what people were using it for, I went, "Oh my God." I, um, and it kind of descended further and further from there.
What
Wasn't
were
a
the
good res wasn't a good response, and it never got better.
I was one of those people that found out about it early. Um, in fact, I was the first person at my school actually to realize it was a thing. It was
Oh.
before it became like mainstream and everybody knew it. So, I
Hmm.
remember exactly where I was. I was driving to work and I listen to NPR sometimes in the morning because, I like to hear about the news. And they had a segment on NPR where they're like, yeah, we got this new thing called ChatGPT. And they're like, and you can ask it anything and it'll give you like a perfect element. And the interviewer was like, no, no, not really. So like, yeah, they had it live right there. They asked it to write basically so many paragraphs about frogs. And it did. And they read it off to everybody. I'm like, no. And then they're like, okay, now let's have it do a poem using the information. And it did it like that. And I was like, the interviewer was like, what? And I was like, okay. So I came back to school, I did my job, and then I got to my prep period, and I was like, huh, I'm gonna look. So I go there, and that was before they had anything. Like they were getting anybody that could use it because they didn't care.
Hmm.
Nobody was interested in this. They were like, yeah, you don't even need to sign up. Go ahead, use us, right? There was nothing. So I typed in a couple of the prompts that I use for some of my essays for my kids. Beautiful essays immediately within seconds. And I was like, huh, this may be a problem.
And ChatGPT has done exactly what you would have expected it to do. This is a screenshot of the website Fiverr. This is where people would go to hire out work that they needed done either for projects that they were working on, for business offers. You could hire a ghostwriter, you could hire a graphic designer to make a 3D model of the product that you are working on. And many people don't use this website anymore because now ChatGPT has replaced ghostwriting entirely.
For me, it's a time saver. Like I remember when I was in grad school writing my papers, and it took hours to days, depending on the research that had to be done. Um, which I guess at that time of my life, I'm not complaining, it was okay. But if I had to do that now, I don't think I'd be able to finish school. So I think as long as you are doing the combined work, AI can be a super powerful tool. My husband uses AI to help him research his topics for his stuff, whether it's his work, his school, and that allows him to then have time that he may not have had to spend with, his family and to do some of his hobbies that I know are super important for him to maintain his sanity.
The arguments brought up against using AI are ones that remind me about the arguments brought against steroids in professional sports. You could say, like, I am accomplishing the goal. I am getting to the highest point I possibly can. But part of the joy of interacting with art, with interacting with a book, is that it is the thoughts and emotions that a human being has created. And the ease of these AI tools is that you don't have to express a lot of your own thoughts and emotions. You can, in fact, just hit create and tell it to make something, and it will do exactly what you say.
If we have a scale, up here is like it's lazy. I think it I think what the technology has done is that is it has enabled and encouraged a lot of people to be lazy and take the easy way out, not really think for themselves. On the other end of it, I think it's like actively doing things to people's brains. Like it's instant gratification. It's like TikTok short form content where you just scroll past these meaningless, weightless things.
Hmm.
And if you can just press a button and get the thing, and you can just do that over and over and over again, that's gonna do something to you eventually.
Every once in a while, you'll get a kid that's done absolutely nothing, no brainstorming, no outline, no nothing, and then turn in a beautiful final draft, which is obviously a dead giveaway. And then
Hmm.
every once in a while, a kid will turn in an essay and they'll use words that I know they don't know. And so what I'll do is I'll bring them up. I'm like, okay, so what's this word mean? And they'll be like, I'm like, okay, how about this word? And they're like, tell me the main point of your essay. Uh, and then I hand them the paper. I'm like, all right, redo it. If you don't, I'm giving you a zero.
There's a growing fear that AI is going to replace humans. This fear is not only perpetuated from a day-to-day basis by normal human beings, but this is also being pushed by bigger companies that are trying to sell AI employees. So, are we going to have writers and educators be replaced by machines? Well, if our current team of educators is anything to go by,
I don't use it directly. I personally am not a fan of it. And the main reason I'm not a fan of it is only because, like, a couple things I've looked up, it doesn't actually make my job faster, if that makes sense. So, like,
mhm,
we were shown up, we've been had multiple trainings on different AI tools. And I've used them, but as someone who's been teaching for 16 years, I have a lot of stuff. All right. I have a hard drive and a Google Drive filled with materials, with lesson plans, with everything. So, although I could use AI to create more things, if I ask AI to create something, I then look at it and be like, well, I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like that. I want to change this, this, and this. And by the time I'm done changing everything, I could have just made it the same way, same speed as to begin with. So it doesn't actually speed me up. And in certain areas, it actually takes longer, uh, depending what it is, just to get the idea across to AI. And it could be that I'm just not as good of a prompt writer, but I think part of it is that, and part of it is just that they don't really know exactly what I do. So in the amount of time it takes for me to explain what I want at what grade level, et cetera, by that point, I could be halfway done. I have had other colleagues though that will do use AI and they'll make a what document like, all right, Brian, what do you think? What do you think about this one? I'll be like, okay, well, we need to change this, this, and this. So for them, it's faster because they just push the button, but then I go and I fix it up for them, which doesn't make my job faster.
It neither helps nor hinders it because I've been doing this myself just fine, and there's really nothing that can be expedited by using the technology. Like there really is. There's nothing. I have my process, and my process works.
so we've seen that the old way of doing things is not improved or given any sort of new flavor by using AI. But what we've also kind of seen is that people's critical thinking skills from relying on it too much has also had a severe negative effect from using AI.
If you're not keeping on top of it, personal creativity for some people has seriously tanked. Or there's that sense of like,
Hmm.
I gave it the input, but I don't feel like I can truly say I own this. And I know there's kind of an issue going on with this right now in literature and art.
I don't think there is any particularly ethical use for generative AI, making videos, making images, creating text. I really don't think chatbots are a good idea in like a thing that you can have like a like conversation with. Oh my God, that's such a horrible idea. That's going to go down. That's already been going down bad routes, man. There's there's like multiple kids who themselves because they thought ChatGPT was their therapist. And that's really scary. And stuff like AI girlfriends, AI boyfriends. Oh my God.
A main point that artists and writers have from the use of AI is that it is stealing work that others have done without any sort of consent in the ethical realm. However, what I discovered from my interviews was that we were doing this long before AI was ever created. Do you use any sort of like assess AI assessment tools in order to determine like do those exist in any sort of way for your profession?
They have tried to make it because obviously as teacher we've looked at it, because once upon a time there was oh, what was that stupid turnitin.com,
I remember
right?
that.
That stupid program. I hated that with every fiber of my being. And I'll tell you why I hated it. I hated it because turnitin.com was making money off of me and every other student that submitted their crap to it because what they had is they had a huge database of everybody's work and that's what they checked it on. So they were checking
Mhm.
plagiarism based on other people's submissions. But I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to help your stupid business. I should deserve a cut of that pay. Instead, I'm getting a professor that's using this stupid program to try to check, and half the time it's flagging sentences that there's no other way to say it. All right. You've
Mhm.
got, thousands or hundreds of thousands of things on the same part, and the English language is only so big. You can only phrase something in a good way so many ways. So they're like, oh, this is 13% plagiarized. I'm like, no, it's not. Shut up.
Between our conversation of educational ethics and the ability to put entrepreneur work on super speed, I found it still a struggle to come up with the answer to the question, when is a tool no longer a tool?
You're using ChatGPT kind of like as a trusted friend or parent or something like that, helping you with something, absolutely. On the other hand, if you're using GPT to do all your work for you and then passing it off as your own, which is the definition of plagiarism, then
Hmm.
yeah, that'd be the unethical version. So if you're using it to help improve what you have, not a problem. If you're using it to do everything from the beginning to the end, then I mean, at that point, why are you bothering to do it to begin with?
When a tool becomes a crutch and you can no longer function effectively without it. I think the
Mm.
level of dependency becomes the problem. And I could go into so many topics about dependency, but I'll just leave it at that. That when you become utterly dependent and can no longer function independently, I think that's when you have a problem.
My takeaway from interviewing all of my friends here on this is that in order for it to actually be usable, actually make a difference, and actually create something that's going to make an impact on someone, you yourself, as the individual, need to have the foundational knowledge in order to put in there in order for it to get the outputs. As for any sort of copyright that might come about for it in terms of ethical standpoint, I had a question where I proposed to Brian where we were all both able to sit down and say to one another, if you are able to put in the work and sit down and say that, hey, this is my own creation, then that isn't plagiarism. But then it becomes a question of putting that into law and putting that into legal wording and legal practice and standing.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, the one nice thing we have is at least modern AI struggles with long stuff. It really does. Um, so a human can keep long stuff in their mind and keep going with it. And that it's possible that someday AI will be good enough to do long stuff. But seeing as how AI is basically just a development of predictive text, I don't know. There'd have to be some breakthrough that they don't currently have.
At the end of the day, a tool is no longer a tool when it is commanding the end result and you yourself are not the one giving the output.
If you're in business and you're thinking about AI, give it a shot and find people, communities that are involved in it too. If you're a stay-at-home mom like me, definitely give it a shot and don't be afraid of it, but definitely be cautiously optimistic with it. I'll leave it there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Christa. Hey, 6-7.
Oh, don't even start. Don't even start with that. It doesn't even make sense. I can't say I have a mixed class of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and I now have to say, all right, give me 5. That's my quieter and down tone. Give me 5, 8th, 7th, and 6th grade. I used to say 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, but now I see a whole bunch of them acting like little morons, so I have to count backwards. Anytime involving 6 and 7, I go 7, 6, which is so annoying. But it's just the skippity riz toilet of this generation. Next year, it'll be cringe for anybody to say, and we can move on to whatever the next bit of idiocy is.
The AI collects information, like I ask it for like a research paper on potatoes, and it'll collect all the information from the internet on potatoes.
I said that because I'm Irish.
Actually, no, it was just the first thing that came to mind, but you're welcome for the
What you fucking
association.
do with Irish?
I work in a grocery store. I see a lot of potatoes, all right? It's just...
Leave that in. That has to stay in because that's funny.